Hello and welcome. My name is Sage and I'm a professor of biology here at Holyoke Community College. I'm teaching the cannabis cultivation class at the Cannabis Education Center. And this presentation is about soils and hydroponics and how they relate to cannabis. So we all pretty much have an idea of soil as being the dirt outside, but soil is a very complex type of material. Now, this is just showing that there are different layers to soil, but we can also see rocks, we can see roots, there's different colors. And so when we look at soil, we have to consider all of that. And soil has those different layers and they're called horizons. The O horizon stands for organic matter. It's on the top, the very top of the soil. That's where we find decaying leaf matter, decaying material, and some of the topsoil. Then we have the A horizon, which is at the very top. It's a solid soil matrix. Then the B horizon is down below that. C horizon, and the parent material, which is usually rock. Now, when we grow, we usually consider what's happening in the A and B horizons. But if you study soil science, you'll look at all of them. Topsoil is what we are most concerned with here, and you can get your topsoil tested at the Massachusetts Extension Office over at UMass. I highly recommend that. And when we look at topsoil, we want to make sure that it's suitable for growing what we want to grow, in our case, cannabis. So topsoil is the top 5 to 10 inches of soil. Microorganisms live in this part of the ground, and it's rich in organic matter. Hopefully, organic matter is all the carbon-based material that is found in soil, and that includes the breaking down of leaves, the composted material that you might add to your garden. So organic matter is helpful for providing nutrients to the soil and providing nutrients to the plants that are growing in the soil, and also giving a little bit of aeration to the soil. It keeps it kind of fluffy and gives the roots some good stuff to move around in. It helps the roots to move. Types of soil are generally classified as being silt, clay, and loam, and those are the 3 major types of soil. However, they combine to form intermediate types. This is a soil triangle that is often used in environmental science and soil science classes. So the way that we read this is, on one side we have the percent of clay in the soil. On the other side is the percent silt, and down at the bottom is the percent of sand. And this would be looking at one soil sample. So if you were to analyze it and find, 70% clay, let's say 30% silt, you'd be up here in the clay. If you've got 30% clay, 70% sand, you'd be in sandy clay loam type of soil. Silt loam down here can range from 40% sand to 75, 85% silt. So knowing what type of soil you have, for one, is very important for considering what you're growing. Some soils are better than others for growing. And having your soil at the very tips of this triangle is not ideal. We're looking for something in the middle. Sandy loam, silty loam, these silty clay loams, clay loam. And loam is kind of what we call the stuff in the middle here, the combination. That's ideal for growing. So you want to have a mixture of soil particles. Now, clay is a soil particle that is really tiny. So these are the tiniest soil particles that we can find. Mineral soil. Silt is slightly bigger. It could travel in rivers. And sand is even larger particles, visible particles of soil. So when you have a combination of clay, silt, and sand, what you have is a combination of different sized particles in your soil. And this can help with drainage and water retention specifically. It could also help with roots. When you have clay soil, solid clay soil, it gets very compacted because those particles are so small and they can pack together really tightly. And that could really impede roots. When you have a lot of sand in your soil, maybe you've got 100% sand, well, that's going to have a lot of big particles. And whenever you water, that water is just going to drain right out of the soil. If you think about a beach, and how you can just pour water onto the sand on a beach, and the sand doesn't get muddy. That's because of all the large size particles you have there. And silt is somewhere in the middle, and it will have some of the properties of both clay and sand. So having a combination is really ideal so you can get those sand particles in between the clay particles and silt, so you can have proper drainage. Soils for agriculture have to be rich in certain nutrients for plants to grow. And carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen are some of the most abundant elements that we find in agricultural soils. Carbon forms the basis for life, and we have carbon all around us, inside us. Carbon is part of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, but it's also part of that organic matter that's found in soil and can be part of some mineral soils to some extent. Hydrogen and oxygen, also abundant in soil. Now we also have to have nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus in our soil. These are important macronutrients for plants. And I'm going to talk more about that in another lecture when we talk about the nutrients for plants. But those we have to have some of them in our soils. Organic matter, like I said, is important for our soil. It includes decaying organisms and provides air spaces, the drainage, and micronutrients. So all of those soil particle sizes contribute to the texture of the soil. That's how we describe that, the texture. What's your texture? Sandy loam, sandy clay loam. Those are two examples of very good soil types for agriculture. Soil types by texture are mapped out in the United States and all over the world. And this is a color-coded map showing where we have sandy soils, clay soils, and everything in between, and exposed bedrock. So up here in Massachusetts, we have some sandy loam soils in the middle of the state. That's what the blue is indicating down here on the chart. And over in the Berkshires, we have some loam. We also see that in the Connecticut River Valley down in Connecticut. You could find this chart online. It's a StatsGo soil texture chart, and you can zoom in. So what we have here in Massachusetts is very different than what is out in the Midwest and Colorado, different types of soil, and that's going to have different implications for our agriculture. I think it's very striking how sandy it is in Florida. It's what we would expect, but here seeing it on this map is very interesting. And you can also find some data on soil types in Massachusetts. And this is one that's color-coded, and we're looking at counties here, and we can analyze the soil by county, looking at soil surveys. So if you're growing your cannabis in an outdoor environment and you're using the soil, getting a soil test is ideal so you can know what you've got and you can amend properly. This is going to conclude part 1 of our soil and hydroponic presentation. Please stay tuned for part 2.